was already mad. You know what I mean? And so when I remember going to my first lecture, and like we were in this like literally like this lecture theatre that was tiny, and people were sat on the floor. And I walked in like fashionably late as you do, and I remember looking around being like, "You want me to sit on the floor?"
£9,000 a year.
Me and my big £9,000.
Welcome to HadalTV. My name is Zamzam.
And my name is Ahmed Umar.
We are here to engage
And inspire.
to tell our story.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another episode on HadalTV. Today we have a special guest, a young student activist who's been doing many great things, not just here locally in Manchester, not just nationally, but you know, across the continent basically. So what I'm going to be doing to start us off with is just to get her to introduce herself, and yes, you know, it is a female, and get her to share a bit about herself, her background, you know, where she grew up and what inspired her, kind of thing. So take it away.
Yes, my name is Zamzam Ibrahim, and thank you for the lovely introduction. Oh God, where do you start, I guess? I currently have recently been elected, alhamdulillah, as the Vice President of the European Students' Union.
Wow.
So that's where I'm at right now. To rewind a little bit back, I guess, I was, until recently, the President of the National Union of Students, and then before that, the President of my local union at Salford University. And for those of you that have no idea what student union is, it's a representative body that represents the university. So at local level, we represent the local university. At national level, you represent every university and college in the country. And at European level, you represent every single university and college across Europe and beyond, actually. So like that. So a lot of my work is around like activism. It's around campaigning for defending the rights of students, and that extends way beyond like the curriculum and like what you learn in the classroom. And I'm also like a climate activist, something that I like is quite dear to my heart. A social activist is like essentially a given, being a Black Muslim woman. And so yeah, that's kind of who I am, I suppose. And like I guess outside of like my political life, I am a Black Somali woman who was born in Sweden, came here at the age of 10, and has been trying to navigate this island ever since, trying to understand it. And I can confirm that I'm still not successful in that field. Wow. Still trying to figure it out. But aren't we all, I guess?
Definitely. So what was like your early, highlights, your early memories growing up in Manchester? What kind of stuck out? You know, what stood out for you most? What did you enjoy doing most, you know, being here as a 10-year-old?
So I actually grew up in Bolton.
Oh.
So I'm from Bolton, which, like, as Boltoners, we claim Manchester constantly, as you know. Everyone knows, like, so my Twitter name is Zamzam MCR. Yeah. And I remember when I got verified as Zamzam MCR, I had to be like, that's it now. Like, I have to claim Manchester for good. And then everybody was just like at me, being like, you're from Bolton, never forget. And like, so Greater Manchester means a lot to me, and I hope you guys take that very seriously when you talk about Manchester. Yeah. But I think for me though, Manchester itself played a huge part in like growing up. A lot of my family live in Manchester, and like there was a rich and well connected Somali community in Manchester. Yeah. So like I remember as a kid coming to Al Furqan Masjid and like listening to talks and like and being a part of that community there. And I felt like even though I lived like a 20-minute drive away from like Al Furqan, I felt like that was my community, that was like our centre. Yeah. And so like Manchester's always been a city that I've connected with, and a city that I love so much. But I think growing up in this area, I've always seen like this like fine line between like what success looks like for like being a Black Muslim, specifically being Somali. Like I remember growing up and like being Somali was such like a negative thing at school. Like people used to joke about being Somali, like and like Twitter every day, like they just come for Somali's necks, and it just didn't make sense to me. And then now we're living in a completely different world where like Somalis are loved just constantly unnecessary gas, and I'm like, this is like a weird like complete 180 that we've done. Yeah. So I think like for me growing up in Manchester, Greater Manchester, it was like I guess a great experience in the sense that like there is a rich Muslim community here already, but I think what was always missing is like the rich like Black Muslim community. Yeah. And like for me, when I started my school in Bolton, I remember like looking around and like all the Muslims, like there was loads of Asians in my school, but they were all Asians, and so people didn't understand like why I would wear the hijab.
Yeah.
Because they were like, but you're black. You know, are you Asian now? And I'm like, I can't change race. That's not how it works. And so it was always like the whole thing of like people understanding that, like I had to constantly like explain that I was Muslim, even though I was wearing a headscarf. You know, like, and to me that was like the first like point of like trying to. I mean, the reason I actually wore the hijab, I remember I came at the age of 10, and I didn't wear the hijab when I was in Sweden, and I wore it here because I wanted the people to recognize me as a Muslim. I wanted to walk down the street in the same way the Asian shopkeeper would say Assalamu alaikum to my mum, say Assalamu alaikum to me as well, you know what I mean? Look at me strange when I say Assalamu alaikum back. And so like for me, like it was like a quite literally like I wanted to be identified as a Muslim, right? And then obviously as you go through life, and like I went to college, I started to like see the barriers that just this piece of cloth creates. And the fear that it creates is like something that till this day is something that I struggle to comprehend. But for me, like it's always been like something that I've like constantly been battling and constantly like trying to understand and like, but also like eradicate those issues that exist. So yeah.
So which college did you go to? Was it in Manchester or in Bolton? Or?
In Bolton.
In Bolton.
I went to Bolton sixth form.
And then after that you went to Salford University.
Yeah.
And so what inspired you to actually become, you know, a young student activist? What was like the catalyst in your early years?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You know what is? I think, and this is like something like a lot of young Somalis relate to. Like our masjids, our local communities, like have always facilitated somewhat, like when they have been given funding, some kind of like community activity. And like I remember, there was always activities for the boys. There was always trips. Like I remember, like there's like football tournaments organized for boys. Like and then I remember like there was like this big trip for boys to go to like Birmingham for like the big lectures and stuff. And I was like, I mean, what about us? And like for me, it started from genuinely a selfish space of like, but what about women? Like I want to go and play football. I want to go swimming. I want to play karate. Like what? Why are these not available? And I remember like my mom's always been like most moms, like don't complain, like because it's useless, right? Go do something about it. And so I remember getting involved in my local community and be like, okay, I want to do this for young girls, and literally wholeheartedly, and I back this till this day, kept coming from a selfish space because I love basketball, being like I want to organize a basketball tournament for girls, and I like did that, and then I realized like how easy it was and how like I guess like accomplished it was and how important it was for like the girls in my community because it's the first time something was organized for them. And I was like, yeah, I think we can do more of these things. And that's kind of like how I got involved. And I've also always been like a person that like burns inside when I see injustice. So I'll always call something out. And like I have this fearlessness in me. And I think it comes from like the whole thing of like literally like I'm not afraid of anybody but my parents. So and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So at the end of the day, right, like there's nothing this teacher can do to me. There's nothing that this like person can do to me. So I'll call it out. And if my dad beats me later, that's a different issue I can deal with.
I think you know what, you're just saying that because like it's something that I never thought of actually. Looking at what you just said there, like there's always been like so many different programs for boys, especially when it comes to around the mosque, around the community. I think when the Somali community spots being established in the area, there was always like funding for like boys doing this, boys doing that. I actually never thought of like any programs was done for girls until now. I know it's a question no one asks.
There has been a few in the past, but it's been like there's one or two Somali girls that would get involved in it, but not like the majority. And it hasn't been a case of where, you know, a young Somali girl actually organising something in the early years of growing up in the community as well.
Because all the social area, like, you know, Hideaway and stuff like that, barely used to see Somali girls there. Like, there was like one or two that, like, you know, the familiar faces that like was also involved.
But it's because those opportunities were just never there. And like also the thing is, right, a lot of those spaces, like I remember like going to youth clubs and like youth centres in Bolton and even in Manchester, and like those spaces were just like it was just boys. And so like you walk in, you're like I shouldn't be here, like automatically. And so it was never a space for us to actually enjoy ourselves and like the other thing is like we're Muslim at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean? So like if I want to go and play a sport, I want to make sure it's in a space where I'm comfortable as a Muslim woman, you know. And that was never taken into account for.
I think that's 100% agree with you because
I mean, you would never think about it because you're not a woman, so you don't understand, like, I guess, like, our experiences and like why we need that private space, and like and that's the thing. Like, I think there's a whole like relearning that needs to be done, especially like from our generation, in terms of like who are going to be running these facilities, who are going to be thinking about like actually what opportunities are available for young girls.
Yeah, because I think there's so much energy wasted. Well, not wasted, but so much energy being invested into boys, where they're like, oh, you can't keep them for the streets and give them this and give them that, and because we benefit from that.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Like we went tournaments to London, Birmingham. There's no city we haven't been in the UK.
Yeah.
Even we went abroad with programs like that from the area. Yeah, but I think it's one of those things. Like I guess if not more than 50% of that girls. I mean, like, what do they get?
Yeah.
And that's a question no one asks. Or you know what I mean? Because they really, I think it is a sad, really, that actually
we've been asking. Sitting here
right now.
We have been asking.
But I think it's something that we need to be addressing as a community, really.
Definitely, man. So you touched on about you just having this fearless attribute. Where do you think that comes from? Aside from within, is there anyone else that may have inspired you growing up, or?
I don't know. I think it's the Somali Nima within us. Like, do you know? I think Somalis, in general, like, we're actually quite fearless. Like, we're always like the outspoken people, and like we're always the ones to like defend anyone like in a position of injustice. And I think it comes from like I guess it comes from like the way in which we're raised, and like our parents, the way our upbringing, and like how we value like individuals, and how we value like respect and integrity, and like that's something that's been instilled in us, right? Regardless of like where you've been raised and how you've been raised, like we have that integrity to make sure that like somebody isn't like struggling or like going through a struggle, like when you can do something about it. And so for me, like that's something that my parents have always raised me with, and so I've like, and I think to a certain extent, even though there has been like battles and like I've thrown myself into sometimes situations of like burning buildings, I'm at the end of the day, like I think for me, the reminder of constantly like, can nobody do anything to me but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has always gotten me through it, because at the end of the day, like these are just like worldly decisions that we're making, and like the Daily Mail can at me, like people can send me death threats, but like you know what I mean, like there's nothing that's not written won't happen to me, and I think like I find solace in that constantly, just to keep going.
That's amazing. So you were you went to Salford University. So obviously you went from arranging activities from the local mosque, local community, and now you're at uni. How did that step start from actually being involved as part of being a student activist kind of thing?
So it actually started at my first ever lecture. I did accounting and finance, and I remember. So I was like the first year when it went up to £9,000.
Wow.
So I was already mad. You know what I mean? I was already mad. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so when I remember going to my first lecture, and like we were in this like literally like this lecture theatre that was tiny, and people were sat on the floor. And I walked in like fashionably late, as you do. And I remember looking around being like, you want me to sit on the floor?
Pay £9,000 a year.
Me and my big £9,000. I was like, oh hell no. And I went up to my lecture and I was like, I'm not sitting on the floor. Like, that's not happening. Like, I've come to university, right? I'm paying for these facilities, and you're telling me to sit on the floor to write notes for an hour and a half. That's not happening. And the lecturer quite literally said to me, like, there's nothing I can do about it. Like, this is a student, like, as a student, you can raise it with like management, but there's nothing I can do about it. Did I attend that lecture? Absolutely not. I was like, who do I need to speak to? And this is literally my first week. I was like, who do I need to speak to? And what's like, where is her office? And I went straight to that office, and I was like, this isn't okay. We're paying £9,000. You expect us to like have learning conditions whilst we're like learning from the floor in like some basement. Like, this isn't okay. And the lecturer was like, that's fine. We'll adjust the numbers. And then by the next lecture we were in a completely different room. And I remember like that same like manager that I was speaking to was like, I'll change the room, but you need to make me a promise. She's like, you need to become a student rep for your cohort. And I was like, okay, fine. Like, didn't think anything of it. I was like, sure, okay, cool. And then I did it, and I just literally loved it, because I spent a year being like this isn't okay. Y'all need to pick up like on this. Like just being like, this ain't working for me. But like, if I'm honest, that Zamzam, who was like a student rep and like was trying to like improve her course, was yet to even like understand her political journey. Because for me, went from like thinking that this was the biggest issue. Do you know what I mean? Like me paying £9,000 to get my money's worth was like my most important issue in that campus. And then I remember like I ran for vice president first at Salford, and I ran quite literally again because I wanted to. So I was doing account finance, and like I wanted to do a placement, and I was applying for placements, and then somebody told me like this can count towards your placement, becoming a vice president. And on top of that, it's a well-paid job, and you don't need to move out. And I was like, sounds intriguing. It's a paid job, yeah. And I just spat out my opinions. I could do this.
Easy.
It sounded great. Do you know what I mean? Like opinions, get paid, get credits for it. I was like, this is sounding like our language. So I went for it. And like, I think that role and the people that I met and like the work that I did completely changed my view on life. Completely changed my view on like
open to a new world.
Yeah, because I think, do you know what it is? Like the way in which we grow up and like the environments that we grow up in, like we don't know political education. We're not privy to it, you know? And so even though we experience racism, we experience sexism, we experience Islamophobia, we don't have the words and like the ability to articulate our experiences and actually understand it through like why it's happening. And like that year for me was like just a learning tool. Like it was just like for me to be able to learn actually like where all these injustices stem from and like what the bigger issue is and what the bigger fight is. And I was just like mind blown in that year. And that's how I kind of like went, okay.
So you went to uni with the intention of studying accountancy and finance business?
Yeah, I went to uni to try and make money. Like I was like, I'm gonna buy my mum a house, you know, send her back to Somalia, living her best life. Like I'm not even gonna lie to you, like I remember going on to when like being pressured like on A-levels, like trying to pick a course and me being like, so how much do accountants earn? That's a lot of money. Okay, I could do that.
I wish I did that.
That's literally what I did.
I wish I did that. Like I did a sports science because I loved football so much. I was into that. That's it. You were about your piece so early.
Nah, I was so about my pee. I was like, nah, we're gonna get out the hood. I'm gonna do this.
I wish I known you then. You know what I mean?
That's crazy, man. So growing up, was that something that you always wanted to do, accountancy finance, or was it just something that you just stumbled
Absolutely
across?
not. I absolutely had no idea. Like, I don't know. I think one of the things that like is so abhorrent about our education system is asking a 16-year-old what they want to do for the rest of their life. Like when you think about it, it's wild.
Do you know how many times I said that to people? Like, it is very, very difficult, like, subject to pick at such a young age. Yeah. So basically, you're putting out your whole future.
It's like, yeah.
At 16.
You haven't even experienced life
yet. I know a friend of mine who did computer science, and by the time he like basically did it like college years, then did it uni. I think it was like first year or second year uni. He got so sick of computers that he had no choice but to finish it. And by the time he finished, he goes, I don't want to see a computer ever again.
Wow. That was 100% me with accounting.
Because like how. I don't understand
like,
it.
I don't ever want to see a balance sheet again.
Do you know when you see older people like this, they go back to education. You know the older people that would do business or do other things. You know when they go back to education to study something else, or they get like extra degree on certain thing, you can understand why they're going back because they want to pick up an extra skill.
But it comes from passion. Like you want to do it.
Yeah, you want to do it. But some people are just stuck in life. They cannot get that opportunity again. Because a lot of people they did something and then that's it.
No,
you're not gonna have time to stop and go, you know what?
Honestly, like for me, accounting was because I was good at maths. I loved maths. Like it was the only subject that made sense to me.
I did as well.
I love things adding up. I did additional maths. That's how much I love maths.
Because I always love maths because you can always resolve it at some point.
Exactly. See, that's how my mind works. Like I like things.
If it's anything else, like it's just a mystery. But like maths is always about you and your mind, isn't it? Like you can figure out at some point.
Exactly. Yeah.
I loved maths as well.
So as a vice president at this point at the University of Salford, what were the big challenges that you may have overcome, or what change have you made in that role?
So I guess I started that role and I think like was expected to just be like one of those officers that come in and just does the bare minimum, like speaks to the university, tells them like what the issues that students are facing, then go back to the students and tell them what the university have said, and like just go back and forth.
Just being a middle person.
And like I came into it being like, what do we need to like break down? What do we need to fix? And I think one of the things that I was so lucky to stumble upon is, and I say stumble upon, but actually like they reached out and like brought me in, was like the National Union of Students at the time has a Black Students Caucus.
Oh, okay.
And they reached out to me, and there was an officer at the time at University of Manchester, Ilyas, good friend of mine now, reached out to me as well, and they were like, basically just offered me support. And I was so confused. I was like so suspicious. I'm like, why are you offering to help me? You don't know me.
Yeah.
And it's so weird to me. And then like I remember going to my first conference and like seeing these people organize and like this and like them talking about all the issues and what we're gonna do and to me it was big picture thinking, right? And I feel like, and I realized how small minded I've been, and that's literally what they're designed to do. Like the system is designed to make sure that you're like thinking in that small box because they don't want you to make big changes. And so like when I first got involved in that and I started to understand actually like there's some bigger top conversation I could be having, I brought that back to university and I was like, well actually you need to change a lot of your systems, you need to change a lot of your processes, and like introduce the first ever race equity charter into the university, and like where they were finally dealing with like a small aspect of racism in our education system. And I think for me it was like the doorway to understanding like of like actually how you can use these small positions to like influence huge power.
From then on you went to you've had a door open into the NUS, and how did you then work your way to becoming the president?
So I guess it starts as like when I was vice president at Salford, I also then ran on to becoming, like it was towards the end of my term, I was going back to finish my degree because obviously my parents, that was the most important thing in the world. But in that time I wanted to remain involved, so I actually ran for National Executive Council for NUS. And I was involved in like NUS organising, specifically in the Black Students Campaign, that brought me in and like taught me a lot. And then when I finished that, I was encouraged by then the president of NUS to run for president of my union. And I thought, okay, sure, why not? So I ran for it, got it, alhamdulillah, got elected, and things were bliss until the first day of my term. And actually, no, I think to contextualize it, a couple of days beforehand, it was like 2 weeks before, there was the Manchester bombings in Manchester. And the student was from Salford. And because of the Daily Mail's like terrible journalism, like they found a way to relate the like incoming president being Muslim to this like
up to the
terrorist that like literally nobody knows about and like has no relation to the university at the time anyways. And like wrote essentially a hit piece, and that hit piece didn't really like it was like so insignificant at the time that I didn't think too much of it and brushed it off. Got a bit of hate, like got a few death threats and stuff, and didn't think much of it. And 2 weeks later, I remember I was in London. It was the 1st of July. I was in London for a protest, and I remember like literally my phone blowing up, like completely, like my phone, all my social media platforms, like blowing up, and like everyone just being like, "You're on the Daily Mail." Like you're on the front page of the Daily Mail.
Front page.
You've gone to print, and then within hours, it was like the Sun, the Mirror, like the Telegraph, like it was, and it just kept like there was just like another like, and it was essentially the same story copied and pasted on different platforms, and then within a couple of more hours, it was written in different languages. Like,
no way.
It was like honestly, it was like, and it was the weirdest thing to me, and I remember like living in this like surreal moment of like utter panic at first, being like, well, my career's out the door. Like that's I'm never gonna be an accountant at this rate. But at the same time as well, like just being like terrified because I was legit getting death threats, and then there was like journalists and like press at my house trying to get like a quote, trying to like and all this entire thing was, it was quite literally a hit piece directed at me. From the day I was starting my term, I was on the 1st of July, and it was a hit piece because it was 1st of July was on a weekend, and so no big stories usually run on a weekend, and it was like tweets from like that were like so dumb that are literally laughable. Do you know what I mean? So it was like a stretch of an article that did ridiculously well. Clearly, it was a slow news day, and there was nothing interesting happening in the world.
I know.
But to me, like, that was a time where I was like, I either walk away or like it was like a make or break moment for me. And I guess once I'm sat here because it didn't break me, but I had to make a decision of like, do I actually want to do this? You know, like, this is like, people are threatening like to kill me. People are threatening my family. People are threatening like, and I remember like receiving like death. Like, I was receiving letters from America because it was like around the time of like the Trump election. So I was getting death threats from America, like from the US. Like, I'm talking like actual letters, like handwritten letters. And to me, it was like, it was so surreal. It was so wild. And I remember thinking like, if this is what they're gonna do to me as the president of a union literally nobody's heard of, do you know what I mean, outside of Manchester, like, then imagine like what would happen like, if I even like aspire to anything further. And I remember being terrified, and like one of my friends quite literally knocked down my ego so quickly. And like, imagine somebody's like distraught, broken, right? Your name, your face is printed everywhere, and they're like, get off your high horse. This isn't about you. You ain't special. And I was like, wait, what? What do you mean? It's my face. Which you, like, they're talking about Zamzam, they're not talking about you. And they were like, no. What they're trying to knock down is that, like, is what you represent. It's every black person you represent, every Muslim you represent, and every woman you represent that dares to step into that political space. And actually, that all the article is intended to do is to make you step down and
run away and leave.
Because like, you being in that position like challenges powers in a way it's never been done before. And so for me, it was like that moment of like, well, if I walk away now, they've won. You know. And I think like ever since, that's what kind of that's what's kept me going. Like, being like, what else are they like not letting me take? Because I'm gonna take it.
Did you get a lot of? How was the support from university and people around you?
Me and Salford University have a very challenging relationship. Honestly, at the time, they made things very hard for me when I was president.
I mean, like, when you're getting all this death threats and all these issues are going on, your face printed everywhere, did you receive any support from them?
They tried to distance themselves from me.
Are you being serious?
And so did a lot of Muslim charities that I worked with, because I was a fundraiser for a lot of charities at the time. And so the thing is, right, like, and I think one of the things that we always like fail to do as like a Muslim community, and like even as like a black community, is like, we celebrate people's successes, but the minute they come under fire, right,
everyone just runs away.
Everyone runs away because they're like, I need to save my credibility, right, without even understanding the context of it. And so for me, like, it was the first time that I saw organizations that I gave my blood, sweat, and tears to, that I knew me inside out, completely just be like, Zamzam isn't one of us. And like, Salford basically did that. I remember like at the time they asked me, I was graduating like 2 weeks after that article, and they were like, we think for your safety it's best you don't attend your graduation.
Did you go?
Of course I did. My family flew in. You know what I mean? Like, that's like graduation for some reason is like such a big accomplishment for our families and our parents. So like, literally my dad's brother came in, like my dad, who was working in Somali at the time, flew in. Like, it was a mandatory like big celebration. But it was the fact that like, to them, they would much rather distance themselves from me. And that was an experience. I think that I found that the hardest, because I wasn't disappointed at the university, like distancing themselves. I wasn't disappointed at like it was the Muslim community distancing themselves. That's what I found the most disappointing. And it genuinely broke me at the time.
Yeah, I think it's terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine how stressful that was for you.
Honestly, it's one of those things where you realize, like, I think you start to understand and like take things at face value then, like when, but for me, it didn't knock me, I guess. And like, at the end of the day, like, everybody does things for different intentions. But I guess to answer your question about how I got to NUS President, I literally, like, I think I got into a mentality, and I'm still very much in that mentality of like, like when I hate the whole concept of like, and we've all heard this, like I remember in school being told to like, don't pick this university, do you think you can do this course, do you think you can handle this workload, and it's like constantly being doubted. And so like I've always I have this mentality of like, don't doubt me because I'm going to prove you wrong. And so when I ran for NUS Vice President by the encouragement of a lot of friends at the time, because I was like, there's a lot of work that needs to be done on a national scale to put, and like if it's only to support Muslim officers across the UK who are going through what I went through or might potentially go through what I went through. And then from that, I ran for NUS President because I was like, there's a lot of work to be done. And I think I spent a lot of time like distancing myself from the fact that like, because everybody wants to talk to you about like, oh wow, you've got to this place because you're Black and Muslim, and like, and that's not the reason actually. Like I've gotten here despite the fact that all the barriers that have been put against me because I'm a Black Muslim woman. So it's not about that, okay? I'm here because I am competent and I can do that job and I can do that role, and there's a whole angle of work that has never been looked at because somebody that looks like me and has had my life experiences has never been in this room and had these conversations. And so for me, it was like, it was important. It kind of felt like a sense of duty. And I guess kind of like led me to my role now.
And you at the time, was it the very first Black Muslim to be president of the NUS UK? That's a big achievement, man, mashallah.
No, UK though.
UK, mashallah.
I've seen the numbers already talking about the UK. That's 7 million students.
7 million students. And I think it's sad that like in 2020 we're talking about first, you know? And I genuinely think like that's something we need to like distance ourselves from, because it's like we shouldn't have any more firsts. Like this, we've been here for long enough.
True.
So what was your role like in day to day as a UK and US president?
Honestly, I could like the days are so like there's no schedule, right? So like I could be in like Parliament one morning, visiting a student union another morning, flying out for like an event or a panel or an event or like a conference. A lot of conferences. There was constantly conferences happening. And yeah, I was constantly on the go. I think like I was always up and down the country. My friends would always joke about like how I've like I would tour the country weekly. Because like obviously like we're so like our politics is so like London centric. And so as a part of my role, like I made sure like I visited Scotland and like understood the issues that they're facing there, and same with Wales and same with Northern Ireland, and like understanding actually the context and the issues that like Northern Ireland students are going to be facing in the face of Brexit. And like to me there's a lot of work to be done, but for me I've always seen power in like organizing internationally and working with like other national unions, because like the decisions that they make affect us and vice versa. And so my day could look anything from like me being in like Scotland, then like running up to like Sheffield for a conference, and then like going to another like event to speak on a panel, like so it was constantly like just on the go, like just constantly so much to do. And then there was always like press. I remember doing like press in the most random places. They'll be like, okay, so BBC want to talk to you in like 10 minutes, and I'll be like, but we're on a train. They're like, yeah, we're gonna get off for the next stop and we're just gonna do that. I'm like, sure. Or like just doing podcasts like from my room, and like it was just like honestly it was just constantly on the go, and it's like you just run on adrenaline because there's no sleep, there's no like literally you're just run on adrenaline because you're just like this gotta, and there's so much like I don't know, there's a sense of emergency I guess when like you're working with young people as well, because like we have that time and that energy to be able to do that, and so there's constantly like there's so much to do, and there's that energy and that hype that you feed off each other, and so like there was no schedule.
That's crazy. So you were the NUS UK president 1920, and then COVID hit beginning of 20. So just talk us through how that may have affected anything in your schedule, or
honestly,
how's that been for students overall?
COVID hit and like I guess interrupted a lot of things. Like so it interrupted our last conference as well, and I never got to like give my like mandate and hand over to the next president. It all had to happen online, but I think what COVID did, like for like specifically from the education system, is that like it showed all the issues that exist in it that we've been talking about for years. So like we know like our education system is marketized, like our universities depend on us to be on campus because like we pay, like we bring in money through like the facilities that we use, we bring in money through like living in those accommodations, and so actually like universities are more like a business, not an education platform. And we've been saying that for years and they've been denying it, and it was for the first time it was like they were showing up, and it was like, okay, so why are you gonna hide now? And so I think like that's what one thing that it did that was important for us to be able to organize around. But I think the other thing for me is that like it gave me a time to go into like the abyss for a little bit. Like literally from June to like August, I think September probably, I was like doing nothing. I was doing projects on the side, like I'm still a consultant and like do a lot of freelance work, but like I was like just like living in the midst of things.
Just coasting.
It was so nice to just not be like expected to do any press, not be accountable to students, not be like it was just a really nice experience. And then I got a phone call a couple of weeks later. Well, it wasn't a couple of weeks later actually, it was a couple of months later, but got a phone call being like, so are you interested in running for the Vice President of the European Students Union? And then it threw me completely because it wasn't actually a part of my plans.
Yeah. And when did that come about? Like roughly what time of the year?
Literally a month ago.
Yeah, because I've seen the post on Instagram.
Yeah, and I did it all in silence because it was just so much was happening. And I think first of all, one of the things is like there's so much happening right now, and like people are quite literally struggling to make ends meet and like are losing their jobs. That like and like we have like the whole wake of like the protests happening like across Africa, the Black Lives Matter movements that have like arisen across like most of European countries and in the US. Like I just feel like it's such a dire time that I didn't even want to talk about like running an election. I didn't want to even talk about like celebrating a success. And I remember like fighting it, being like, should I actually like talk about like that I've been elected? And I realized like, especially with like what's been happening in France and like how like the talks about like banning the hijab in Netherlands like made me realize like actually how pivotal and important it is for us to be having those conversations right now. And so I think for me it was like a battle of like nobody wants to celebrate anything right now, but it isn't a celebration. It's actually like a recognition of like I'm going for this role, and the only way I'm going to be able to survive in this space is by having the support and the love and the solidarity of like the people that I like that I know, you know, yourselves, like who have a platform who can share and empower me. And I think that was really important.
You know, like, talking about, you know, just mentioned France. So the students in France, can they not wear a headscarf in classes?
No. You can't wear it in any professional settings, you can't wear it in work. So
because like it's something that's gone, well, not like under the radar, but like obviously like people like ourselves are kind of aware of that. But I think the majority of the people are not aware of something like that. I mean, it is a shocking thing, really. It's like you wouldn't believe like a country like France will stop people wearing religious or stopping people.
I mean, I don't think people realize like how like ingrained Islamophobia is, like specifically in France. Like they have there's like a lot of stories right now that people are sharing because of like what's been happening right now. But like the mass like killing of like Algerians like on the streets, just like blatantly just killing people because they were fighting for independence in their own countries. And like France has a long history of like just Islamophobia, like specifically Muslims, like and like there are like the structures are and institutions are racist, like all of Europe is, but specifically Islamophobia has been so rampant, and there are like campaigns, there are like activists, and there are Somalis out there who have always reached out. But like honestly, we failed them because we don't talk about those issues enough. We don't support them and like run those campaigns, because actually the reality is like it's France first, Netherlands talking about it today. What's gonna happen tomorrow? Who's gonna be under threat? You know what I mean?
They're not being challenged.
And like that's the thing. That's why we always invest in other people's issues, because it's our issues, because it's very important. It's gonna come to us. Yeah, 100%.
We have to be there arguing about that case, because to be honest with you, like I just think it's unacceptable. Like for someone who cannot express what they believe.
Yeah, France, I think it was 2018, elected the first ever hijabi wearing Muslim officer for their national union, UNEF, and Mariam, and she got the most vile Islamophobia I've ever seen in my life. And like it literally made like what happened to me in 2017 like look like the tiniest like little joke. Like to the point where like Charlie Hebdo made a cartoon of her. Like that's like she was and then it faces it constantly, by the way. Like whenever she went to Parliament recently to speak about like issues affecting students with COVID, and a parliamentarian walked out being like, I can't like be listened to an oppressed Muslim woman. Like it's just like it was a whole thing of like, and that's okay, that can run. You know, if a parliamentarian dared to walk out of a meeting with me because I was wearing a hijab, he would lose his job. Do you know what I mean? True, yeah. He would be condemned, right? And in France, she was celebrated, you know, because she was progressive, she was empowering her. And I think like one of the things that in long history is like the way women dress have always been questioned, right? And so actually like like liberal feminism was always spoken about like, oh, women can wear what they want, right? And like often referring to wearing very little. But actually in the same way we can cover up. But there's been an issue with like actually the liberation of like how women dress stops at white women. Do you know what I mean? Like you black women can like struggle with your issues because you're not a part of our problem. And so like I think one of the things that we've always been like consumed in is focusing like on smaller issues and like the bigger picture.
The bigger picture, yeah.
So now that you're sitting as the Vice President of the European Student Union, what changes are you hoping to make in the future in that department?
Oh wow, this is probably something I should have a think about. You know, seeing as I got elected a couple of days ago. I honestly, I think for me, a huge part of it is going to be like completely changing the way in which like the conversations are had. And I think one of the things that I know and I recognize that is I'll probably be used as a token because I'm not only like the first ever black Muslim to be elected in European Students' Union, but I'm also the first from the UK. So there's like a whole load of issues, and I think one of the things obviously like I'm gonna have to focus on in the first 6 months is gonna be around Brexit, like that's happening right now, and the future of European students and UK students is uncertain. But I think wider than that, like there is a whole like a layer of work that ISU has never done on like racism and Islamophobia specifically, and like with a lot of European countries being so blatantly Islamophobic, I think that's work that needs to be tackled. And I'm not a person that's for like just because I'm a Muslim I should be leading on this work. I don't think that's work I should be leading on, but I think it's my job to make sure that the organization's leading on it and the organization's taking it serious. Because if I do the work, then it ends with me the day I walk out that door.
The minute that no one else is facing that issue, it's not an issue anymore. Yeah,
and I think also like think about like legacy building. One of the things that we forget to do like as like elected politicians is that you're gonna be in that role temporarily and then you're gonna leave. So actually like what's more important is like what you leave behind and like and what you set, like what path you pay for people to be able to come in. And like for me it's important to make sure that like other young black Muslims who have lived our experiences and understand the issues come in, and I'm talking about obviously from a competency perspective, like know what they're doing to come in and be able to carry on that work, but also bring in a completely different vision as well.
Definitely, man. So you mentioned you've been doing some campaigns, things around Black Lives Matter. We've had the death of a young Somali girl in Bolton. Was it a year ago or almost 2 years?
Was it Bolton or
Oldham?
Barry, sorry. Shukri Abdi.
Yeah,
sorry.
And so what sort of, you know, how was it like campaigning in those areas compared to just like doing work based around just like student union kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think local issue like that. I think that case specifically was like so personal to all of us.
I think it was,
and it really, really, really hit a chord with me. And I think, I don't know. I think a part of me felt like we failed our sister, like Zamzam, she's called as well. And I think one of the reasons that like wider than like the incident that I don't want to speak about because there's this inquest going on was the fact that like when migrants come into this country and they're rehoused often in areas where like their communities don't live in. And so had Shukri been housed here in like Mossad where her family is actually living now, that story would have been a story that never happened, and case that never happened. And I think like one of the things that, so even wider than like that specific case that we all still need to mobilize about and make sure that justice is seen, we need to like really look at like the systems in which like that create these problems in the first place, because that's what we do like with like a lot of Somali communities and like wider than that, migrants that come into this country looking for safety are then met with like hostility and put in an environment to like be persecuted when they're fleeing persecution, you know. And so like it's our job as like migrants who live in this country, who have settled in this country, understand the system to help them and support them, because they don't know how to navigate that.
It's true that
makes perfect sense, man.
What's happened to the case so far, like with Shukri Abdi?
So there's an ongoing inquiry, so there's an inquest right now, and after the inquest, and then there's going to be a decision made of like what's going to happen next. So we don't really know, but as a part of that inquest, when the dates are released, like inquests are like public hearings, so anybody can go, and so the more people that go down and show support, the better for the family. I think.
When is it? When is the date? Do you know?
I mean, COVID has kind of like
changed
delayed
everything.
Yeah. So we're waiting on a day.
Well, exactly.
Going into a national lockdown again soon. So honestly, it's kind of a thing of when is it going to happen?
Yeah.
Just looking forward to that, and I hope everyone can support and go there.
No, definitely. So you mentioned something about being part of the issue now. It's not just about you leaving and then the work leaving with you. It's more about leaving a legacy.
Yeah.
So what sort of legacy do you think Zamzam Ibrahim will be leaving?
I don't intend on leaving a legacy for Zamzam Ibrahim. I think it's more of like, if the next person that comes in and takes that role after me can come in to less hostility, and a more, I guess, approachable systems and an organization that that is actually willing to do the work. You know what I mean? Because I think like one of the things that we forget is that like what I do is like, it's like, think about like tackling inequalities as like this big wall, right? And like I come along and I'm like chipping away at some of it, right? And then I leave, and then the next person comes and chip away at some more. So the idea is that that I get them closer to that goal. And I know like I'm not going to open that door because this like these systems are so complex and so resilient that they always find a way. But I think what I want to make sure is that the tools that was never given to me and the doors that weren't opened for me like remain open for the next person that comes after me. I think that's the most important thing that you can do, and that in itself is a legacy.
What advice would you have for young Somali girls now going through any school very soon, or going to college, or even going college to university now?
I think the one thing from the aspect of like what advice would I give myself, I guess, is that you are we're far more powerful than we get told. Like from a young age, you get told what you can't do, what you shouldn't do, like, and are constantly like held back. And I think like understanding that the world is quite literally your oyster, and there's nothing that is unachievable or unattainable, and like utilize and use every opportunity that comes your way. And I think for me, like one of the things that I would 100% tell myself and tell a lot of young girls I speak to constantly is that like just don't be afraid of change. Don't be afraid to like do something that like, because when an opportunity scares you, it's probably a good opportunity. And I think for me, there's so many times where I've been like, am I really gonna do this? Like what? Especially like when I agreed to run for NUS President, knowing what has happened to like past presidents in the like and the issues that they've gone through, I was like, what, am I really gonna do this? And I think it was like that fear that made me realize I fear it because of like what I've seen and what I've been told, right? And that's through like such a like almost, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a restricted lens, you know, like we're constantly just being held back. And so when I went for it, like honestly have absolutely no regrets. And I think like one of the things that probably both of you would agree with is that like when you've done something that you're scared to do, or like you're worried about doing, or you're like, is it gonna pan out? When you've come out on the other side and you're like, wow, I didn't think this is where I was gonna get to. And so for me, I think that's one thing I would tell to a lot of girls, because like honestly, I've spoken to so many incredible people, especially in Manchester, be like, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do that. Just do it. Just do it.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Much appreciate having you here.
I mean, I just spoke about myself.
No, I mean, this is what we want to know. This is what I wanted to hear.
Thanks for watching HadalTV, an excellent episode. I hope you guys gained some value from this show. If you have any comments, any questions, anyone that you'd like to have on the show, just let us know in the comments below. As always, like, subscribe, hit the bell button, and we'll see you next time.